Okay, here's my finished project of my PLL02A chip tester. It's a little box I made. So you've got pin 7 on the PLL, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I don't know why that 15 light always lights up. This switch right here switches all the lights and everything to work from negative ground off the battery to chassis ground. Sometimes it works better if it's on negative battery than chassis. And this light right here means that I've got power to the pin 1, which is your VDD. That's your positive power going to the chip. And then, of course, it reads the negative off of pin 16. So that just tells you that you're getting power to the pin 1, positive power to pin 1, negative power to pin 2. Now, here's all my connections to the board. I did make a little, where did I put that at? It's a little clip to clip onto the chip, but it won't stay on. So this is just 28 gauge ribbon cable to a connector, and it goes into the box. And then here's my negative power to my light up there. I won't get into the insides of it yet. Now all these switches is to put either a power or a ground to the PLL. Now that's a whole separate system because I gotta eliminate the channel selector or I'll let out the magic smoke. And the reason for this little thing is it's a guard that it's killed the power and the ground to all these switches. Even though these are center off, it's just a safeguard. Okay, I haven't labeled anything yet. So this is a positive power tap for pin 1. If you want to check, make sure you're getting the correct voltage other than the lights. This is your chassis ground tap. This is your negative post tap. This is a RCA jack. So if you want to check pin 3, and that's your reference input. That's if you hook that up to a freak counter, that's going to be 10.24 megahertz. And the bottom one down here is pin 2, and that's your VCO oscillator input. If you want to check, make sure you're getting the right oscillator into it. And this one here, you can hook up voltmeter to check your VCO volts. And that is pin 5. And the bottom one down here is blank. That's of course, your pin 1 and pin 6, your hot and your ground. Now that one right there is supposed to light up if pin 6 says a loop has been detected. And of course it don't work. This radio does not transmit. So there is something foobar there. Okay, getting back to the lights. Here's our truth chart for a 2701X. This was born a 23 channel and modded by High Gain for 40 channels. Now, as you can see, if I do this right, 8, 9, and 10 are lit. And I've never understood why that one lights up. It does it on my test board with the breadboard. Okay, so we got 8, 9, and 10. 8, 9, and 10s are 1s, so that is in channel 1. Now I'll just go through it real quick, and we won't look at the sheet. I'm going to go to channel 2. Get back here so we can see everything. Just disregard that last one. Now that one is officially lit. And if you look at your, let's see, that's pin 15, so real quick, there's a 1 right there. So that's channel 2. I gotta look through the screen. Channel 3. See, that one's actually off, but I don't know why it's still lit. So there's channel 3, and if you want to go through the tooth chart, you can look up every one of these, but every one of these changes, so. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, big jump there, 14. Now that number 16 right here, it'll start blinking off and then it'll start climbing up. Now, I can't remember what channel I just said I was on, but anyway. See, it jumped up again. And then now it'll light up that one, because that's the next biggest step in the tooth chart. And then it'll go back and pick up that one that lights up. That's number 16, or 15, I should say. And it'll pick up that one, and then it'll go that way, and that. Now, what's really amazing is, look at that. All of a sudden, they all went out. That one's not really on. So if you look at the tooth chart, right there at number 27, from there on, everything with number 7 is going to be lit. So I know that right now I'm on channel 20. So that's why I didn't worry about where I was at. So there's 20, 21. Now that one is officially lit up. 22, 23, 20. It just goes back and forth. And that's the channel selector putting power to everything. I don't have it set up so that I can see a ground, but obviously if the light's not lit up, it's got a ground to it or it's an open. Now you see that right there? Now that number 7 just went out. So right there, we're back at channel 1 again. Now my thoughts is to unsolder the channel selector, and then I'll start playing around with some of these switches and get extra channels. But since how this radio really doesn't transmit, it's not going to do any good to play around with any of these switches, because I won't know what channel I'm on. But I wish that my little thing would have worked, just going off of the, oh, here it is. It's a little chip tester. You're supposed to be able to put on the chip, but I can't get it to stay on there, and I soldered all the wires to it. And of course, it's got the other connector to it. My main thing was stick this over the chip, and I wouldn't have to go through all that hell to solder all those wires on there. Now, the insides of this thing, I'm going to shut the power off, unplug my ground, and I'll flip this thing over, and you'll see the cluster that's inside here. Of course, we got all the lights, we got all the switches. What I did was I ran the ribbon cable in, and then very carefully I soldered all the wires to all these boards. So that's got pin 1 in it, 2, 3, 4, and these are junction boxes, so I should never have to mess with the bottom part, but I can connect anything to there that I want. And then 5 through 16 over there. Now these are like little studs. Let me wheel this thing around here. That one on the end is just a negative. That's the same as going up there to my power tap. That's chassis ground. That's VDD. That's pin 1. Now remember I said that there's a switch on the back of this one. That one right there. That switches everything if I need a chassis ground or a negative ground. Off of that switch, everything goes to that stud. And then I've got a piece of braided, unsoldered braid across there, so I hook up all my lights to that. That's like a little terminal strip. And all my lights are connected to each one of these terminals down here. And if you can see clear down there, all those toggle switches are all joined with a piece of solder wick that's been used. So I just soldered it to all the terminals on both sides, and then each one of those switches is what comes up to these terminals. So that switch right there comes up to 5. That one comes up to 6 and 7 and 8, so on. And then that's where I soldered all my LED lights to, right to there. You can see them. They're just soldered to the same terminal. But that's the insides of it. And I sure wish this little thing would have worked. Now I could have just clamped it right over the chip. Come on, focus. And you line number 1 up and number 8, but I could get it to go on it, but it just wouldn't snap. I don't think that, maybe this thing isn't made for that small a chip. Maybe it's made for a wider one. But it's got little terminals on it. Come on, focus. And each one of these little terminals is supposed to go over the chip. Sure wish that would have worked. Anyway, that's the same exact thing as what that little board there did, except I've got a little bit more sophisticated. But yeah, I had to use ribbon cables, get something real small so I could solder it to the board. And it's pretty flexible. So anyway, 2 charts. What the channel selector does, it sends a ground or a hot to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And of course 16 is your ground. So yeah, maybe I'll play around with this a little bit, but maybe see if I can't get it to transmit. And I'll unsolder that channel selector out of there and maybe mess with some channels. Anyway, there you go. That's it. Got to make up some labels and put on this so I don't have to look at my cheat sheet. There it is. Come on. Get out of the way. Got a little room for some expansion. Now this is still hooked up, so flip the switch down and it's going through the chassis ground. And what's nice about it, you can undo the connector and you don't have to have this thing hardwired to it all the time. It's like a Christmas tree. I really don't think the channel selector puts a ground to anything in the board, because I've got one that had a bridge cut in it and it was an open circuit, And the PLL02A still thought it was grounded, but it was an open. So anyway, bada boom, bada beam. There you go.